Hi, welcome to another edition of the Mayor Minute. My name is Cheryl Vercammen and I'm the Mayor of Marine City. And today I have my special guest today is Stephen Guilliat. He is the St. Clair County Chief Assistant Prosecutor. So I'd like to welcome Steve to our studio and our show.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, I try to have a variety of people on talking about a variety of subjects just to let our audience know locally, what resources we have and, what's available to them. Mm-hmm. So I was given your name by actually a friend of mine who used to work in your office, and she said, you should really interview Steve, which I thought was a good thing. So that's what we're here today to do. So just so you could let everybody know, like what type of work do you do for St. Clair County? I mean, we say that your title is the Chief Assistant Prosecutor. What does that mean?
All right. So what I'll do is I'll start out explaining what our office does, and then specifically what I do. Our office, we work with all the law enforcement agencies in St. Clair County. Local, county, state, and they bring their cases to us. So when the case is finished, when it's done being investigated, they'll bring the case to us, and then we decide whether or not a crime was committed, and we charge the case. We then prosecute that case through the criminal justice system. So we're part of law enforcement, but we are the prosecution arm of law enforcement. As Chief Assistant, I have the honor of managing a great group of trial prosecutors. And before I was Chief Assistant, I was one of those trial prosecutors. Mm. So Judge Hullowitz, he right now is in Marine City. He was the previous Chief Assistant, and when he became judge, I was happy enough and to be selected to that position. So that's when I began more of a management, but I still do go to court. I still am active as it relates to scheduling and things of that nature. So I report to Michael Wendling, who is our elected prosecutor, and a wonderful person to work with. Mm-hmm.
How many people are we talking about, like in the prosecutor's office, approximately?
We have about 14 prosecutors, assistant prosecutors, and we have a little more support staff than that. So we're right around in the low 30 number for employees. Mm-hmm. Geographically and population-wise, St. Clair County, oddly enough, is considered a large county. Mm-hmm. So when we go to trainings throughout the state, they put us in with the huge counties, such as Wayne and Washtenaw and Oakland and Macomb. Mm-hmm. And our issues are quite different, but I always say we're the smallest large county. But it is interesting to, hear some of the issues that they struggle, and then, try to learn from those, because a lot of those issues become our issues. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that we are in that category.
Yeah,
I mean, geographically we're big.
Right.
Right, but we have a lot of farms.
We do, do, and our population puts us just above the mid-counties. So we do, and it's kind of interesting because like Genesee and Wayne, sadly a lot of our crime is committed by out-of-county individuals that come to St. Clair County to do business, the criminal business. So they will drive up from Wayne or from Washtenaw or from nearby counties that are larger, and and a lot of times that is narcotic type activity. But sadly, we do get a lot of that. And part of it too, I think, is geographical. So we are a border county. We're close to Detroit. We're close to Flint. We are the expressways end here. So it's sadly kind of a hot spot as it relates to drug activity.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So we talked about how many people are in your office, and then how many prosecutors are there in St. Clair County? Did you say 14?
Yeah, about 14. We just applied for a grant, so we have a respite prosecutor to help us with some of the overload due to COVID.
Right.
But
you guys weren't really completely
we
shut down,
never
right?
were. Even lucky, we are a paperless office, so we have a record management system that when the court system did go into when it was closed to the public, we were still able to work from home because we could access our files, and then literally we had Zoom court. So we would go to court at home in front of the computer screen, and luckily St. Clair County wasn't hit like some of the other counties that had not made that migration toward paperless systems, because there was not a lot of work getting done in those. So we were able to continue resolving some cases, but naturally there was a backlog that built up.
Yeah. When did St. Clair County go paperless? Because I know that in the hospital, it started. Oh God, 25 years ago.
We were, as it relates to the prosecutor's offices throughout the state of Michigan, I think we were the third or fourth. It's been over 10 years, well over 10 years, and we've always been kind of on the leading edge as it relates to technology. And it was interesting because when Michael Wendling started to nudge us in that direction, those of us, and I was one of them that was used to paper, we weren't very happy campers. He was not very popular for a while. He was a great guy, but change is difficult.
Change is difficult.
And he forced it on us, and now I can't imagine without it. Like from here, today our county building's closing a little early because of the parade. You can't get out. So I'm going to go home and log in, and I'll be able to work for the rest of the day from home. So it really is convenient and productive too.
And productive. And then what I like about paperless is that all agencies can talk to each other.
Exactly.
And communicate with each other and share information with each other.
And the communication is instantaneous. So if I am reviewing a warrant and I need some follow-up, I put my notes in, I hit further investigation, and within a second, it's at the police agency and they know exactly what I need. The old way is we'd do up a memo and it would be picked up the next time their warrant officer was over picking up warrants, but it really has streamlined the system and made it much more efficient.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You had mentioned that we're a border community, or a border county, I should say. Border. I mean, obviously we border other counties, but we also have the big country on the other side of the river.
Yes, and that's what I meant. We are an international crossing, and our Blue Water Bridge gets a lot of traffic. Not so much now because of the fact Canada's still shut down.
But they're opening soon.
They're opening soon, and when they open, we do get a lot of activity on the bridge because violations on the bridge, those can be federal, but a lot of times they don't meet the federal thresholds. And as state prosecutors, we take it all. So the cases that the feds refuse to accept, we end up prosecuting for them on a state crime as opposed to a federal crime.
I have a friend that's a supervisor on the bridge.
Okay.
And it's amazing to me as a Border Patrol officer, sitting in that booth, with the constant flow of people. And, they rely so much on gut instinct.
Right.
The repetitive questions that they ask, they try to trip you up, and they do a really good job doing it, And that whole operation is very interesting.
It's very
to me.
professional, very high tech.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the X-ray machines that they put the trucks through. And sadly, we get a lot of drugs coming across the border.
I can just imagine the
usually thousands of pounds of marijuana in the back of a semi.
Right.
Right.
It's
they try, and
Yeah.
I like to think they don't get away with it very often because we do seem to get quite a few of those cases.
Well, and plus you have the dogs too,
Yeah,
which
the
is
dogs, yep, the x-rays, and just like you said, a really good group of professionals that work there. One of the interesting things too that happens in St. Clair County that doesn't happen in a lot of other counties is on a monthly basis we call it the Criminal Justice Association, and we meet once a month, and it's locals, it's the feds. So we use that monthly meeting as an opportunity to, one, get to know our federal friends, and to communicate and share information with them. So it's really efficient, and it's easy because I know people at the bridge. I can pick up the phone. I know who to call. I know, so you establish these relationships, and we're fortunate enough. Our county's small enough that we can do that. And
where do you meet?
We meet in Marysville, and
Like, is it a professional thing or is it just breakfast at a restaurant?
no, it's a professional thing, but it is for lunch.
Right.
We always have lunch, and then we have an agenda, and we literally go around from agency to agency and indicate information. This is what's going on, and so it was really worked out well.
So do all municipalities, like Marin
Participate?
City? Yeah.
Yes. So Marin.
Or invited, I should
They're
say.
all invited. Not all of them always consistently come.
Sure.
But we always have a good federal show up. Sheriff Department always comes. Port Huron comes, and we do have a lot of downriver agencies that appear as well.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, it really is all about information sharing.
Right.
Sadly, 9/11 taught us what happens when you don't share and work as groups. Because, way back then, law enforcement agencies, it was almost like they were a little possessive of their cases. Like, this is my
Some
case.
still are.
Some are.
Yep.
And we really work hard at sharing information. And Mike Wendling, the prosecutor, he's been very instrumental in, we have a grant program. And what that means is, with respect to forfeited assets, police departments will apply to our office for money for law enforcement purposes. We'll review those things, and if we get an opportunity where we can see, okay, this particular equipment, it can help our entire county. So we'll approve it, but we'll approve it with the condition that all these agencies get to use this equipment. We're going to grant it to you, and we're going to approve this grant, but when they need it, we expect you to use it. And it's been very successful. They really do reach out. In fact, last week we had a situation where they needed a SWAT team downriver, and it was started out as a Port Huron case, but all the different agencies came together to execute a search warrant, and luckily no one was hurt. But it really is nice when we have all these agencies, when they need to, they come together. Like tonight at the Port Huron Parade, there will be other law enforcement agencies working that, helping out Port Huron Police. So we are really fortunate in St. Clair County that all of the administrations from the departments get along. They all respect
That's
each
huge.
other. And what I like to see, because we're the funnel for all the information. Mike Wendling is, Tim Donlin, our old sheriff, used to not like this, but Mike Wendling is the chief law enforcement officer of the county. It's not the sheriff, it's the prosecutor, because that's where it all comes through. So we're really happy, and we're really blessed to be working with such a great group of law enforcement professionals.
It's really good to hear that that there is communication, that there is teamwork, because that's, you're not reinventing the wheel
No.
in law enforcement.
Not at
We're
all.
all, I don't care where you live, the problems are problems, and I think that's a great thing. You had mentioned the bridge, and just for giggles a little bit, what is some of the weird stuff that you've seen come across the border, or some of the weird stuff. Like, I remember there was a rumor, and I don't, maybe it was true, that a guy literally was swimming across the river, you know, in a wetsuit, you know, dragging behind this
Drugs?
Yeah, this
That is
big
true.
pipe full of drugs.
That
and
is
I'm
true.
thinking, oh my gosh, why would you be so obvious? I would be in a little dinghy boat, in a, you know, with my Mai Tai, you know, you know.
That is true. No, that's happened. Like I said before, we get thousands of pounds of marijuana in the back of semis in the middle of frozen carrots. You know, they'll put the produce around the marijuana to try to hide it, but our bridge seems to detect it quite. So there's a lot of, and it's just constant.
Yeah.
A lot of people, especially for people that aren't from here, when they blindly follow their GPS, you know, on their smartphones, it takes them to the bridge. They don't want to go to the bridge, but if they're not paying attention, well, I meant to go downtown. This happened with a witness. We had a trial 2 weeks ago, and she wasn't from this area, and she ended up at the bridge and calling and saying, hey, I'm going to be late. I'm detained by by customs right now. Yeah, so and sadly, we seem to get a lot of cases that way too, because people aren't expecting to get diverted.
Get funneled in.
Yeah, and then a lot of times they will have to go through a secondary type search, and many things are found.
Yeah. Do you really think that, I mean, what is your take on marijuana? I mean, if we get toward, you know, legalization and that kind of stuff, I mean, to me, we should be going after the big guns.
I agree.
The things like, you know, meth and
Yes.
heroin and, you know, the opioids.
The thing that scares me about marijuana is the drug cartels. Drug cartels have seemed to have seeped their way into a lot of states that have legalized it. So I think that if Michigan does a good job on regulating it and making sure that they really are, you know, taking enforcement where it needs to happen. Like if it's legal, that's great, but we don't need a drug cartel coming in, because they will undercut. And if you really think about it, that also destroys the legal businesses, because the drug cartel is going to sell it tax-free. They're going to, you know, they're going to always undercut.
Right.
So I think it's really important. You know, Michigan has gone down this road. I think they need to be careful. And I think also they need to look at other states and learn from their mistakes. Because Colorado, it's a good tool that we can learn from. It
was one of the first.
It was
wasn't
one of the first.
Yeah.
And also, sadly, you know, they've had some real issues. And I think the best thing is if we learn from those. But I agree with you completely. I've been doing this job for many years. Way back when it was heroin, then it became crack cocaine. And back when I ran the drug unit, prosecuted for the drug unit, it was all crack cocaine. We had no heroin. Heroin's back, methamphetamine is back. And methamphetamine, I mean, it has decimated communities. It is highly addictive, and sadly, it's here.
Yeah.
And so is heroin and prescription drugs. So it's kind of one of those are the ones I think we need to focus on, because those are the ones that people die from those overdoses.
Yeah, and it decimates families
absolutely.
and communities. And, you know.
The addiction, you know, some people have problems with marijuana, but I think those are the same person. They're going to have a problem with alcohol, and they're going to struggle with that. But people that are addicted to the heroin and the methamphetamine, those people, you know, they will choose the drug over their family.
Right.
It really is. It's the best way I can say it. It's sad to see what drugs have done. Now, we have a sobriety court in our county. Judge Monahan runs it, and they deal with individuals with alcohol and drug issues. And we also have a mental health court that I participate in quite a bit down there due to coverage issues sometimes. And we get a lot of people that are mentally ill that are also addicted. So our county is trying to be proactive and positive in not, we realize we can't arrest our way out of this. But when it comes to the big dealers, we need to take those people out of society because they're in it for profit.
Oh, yeah.
And they are killing people.
Yeah, they don't care.
And luckily we have 2 drug units. St.Clair County citizens have, recently they approved increase for the drug task force. So I have, my office, I have 2 dedicated drug prosecutors, and that's all they do. And they are busy like you would not believe. And they are on call every day of the year. They do all the drug warrants. They do all these narcotic prosecutions. And one of the things that back when I worked in the drug unit, I mean, we had a lot of numbers. But one of the things that I think Sheriff King is and the people out at Drug Task Force, they are focusing up on the bigger dealers. And that's really the way to do it. Because the user and the small-time dealer that deals due to an addiction, they're not the threat. It's the people, especially the people from out of the community that come in, set up shop, and we have a no plea policy on a lot of these big drug cases. And so they come here for their drug business. They need to be ready for the consequences.
Tell me about the task force.
So the task force is composed of a lot of sheriff deputies, but they've got feds on them. So we've got federal agents on our drug task force, and we basically have 2 units. We also have Port Huron police officers on that task force, and that task force operates everywhere within St. Clair County, and their mission and goal is to, I don't want to say, we've all heard of the war on drugs. You can never win the war, but you can keep it in check. And one thing I am certain of, without that drug task force out there doing what they do, drugs would overtake us because it's such a specialized area. And you really, the investigations are different, they're longer. A regular department would have such a difficult time putting together the complex and big cases that our task force puts together. And that's why we have 2 prosecutors, and that's all they do. They know everything about drug prosecution, about drugs. And these newer drugs that are not yet scheduled as illegal, they're aware of it before, this is a problem. And so they're really a good group, very professional, and they keep the check and balance in this county and keep the drugs. Like I said, they don't keep them out, but they keep it under control. So.
And then, when does the task force get involved?
The task force gets involved if let's say Marine City. Let's say Marine City has an issue they know or they suspect there's a drug house. They'll contact Drug Task Force, share the information with them, and then the task force will start a targeted investigation on that house. And
When you say drug house,
Yep.
define drug house.
So, drug house, under the legal definition, is very broad. But what I'm talking about is a situation where someone's setting up shop and dealing drugs.
They're not making the drugs in the basement.
Sometimes they do. I mean, we have had a lot of meth labs, sadly. But normally, it's a house where, and they're not always from out of town, but a lot of times they'll come, move in, and that will be their place of business for however long, and then they'll move on to another house. But they're moving drugs out of that house. So task force has a lot of resources. They deal with informants. They have really good intelligence, and they're able to put these investigations together that we've really got some big type drug dealers in this county, and we've prosecuted them, and a lot of them are now gone to prison.
So as a citizen, right? So I own a home, and all of a sudden, a couple doors down, house goes for sale, you know, and I start seeing a lot of
traffic
and
in and at odd
know.
hours, and people staying short periods of time.
Right.
That's indicative. And if a person saw that, they can contact the sheriff department because that's the unit that runs the task force, and just relay the information. And that,
so would the sheriff's department then ask, you know, like if I said to local law enforcement, you could put a camera in my house and you can film all that for all I care. Could they do that?
They could. If you said, listen, I want to report what I'm seeing, but I don't want to be involved. I'm afraid of these people, that's fine too. It's all about the information, and then that gets to the drug task force, and then they'll analyze it and figure out, is this, you know, what's going on, and then depending on what they have going and what intel they receive, that could be the next target of the investigation. Yeah.
But the main thing is, though, is people have to report it.
People have to keep their eyes open and report. And it's not only drug activity, but if you see something, as you know, you live in this county, and as much as, you know, people don't like to get involved, the justice system does not work if people look the other way. It really, you know, it takes a lot to get involved, but it really is the right thing to do. And I always like to say, if that were your mother or your sister, you would want someone reporting that. And luckily we do have people, and it has been more difficult with this COVID backlog because, you know, some of these cases have been on hold for, you know, 15, 16, 17 months.
Yeah.
And people are, you know, I'm done.
I'm done with it.
So,
right. I've waited long enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's really important. We are, St. Clair County's in what is called phase 4. So we're doing jury trials again. We're having in-person court hearings. So
that's how the justice system works.
That's the way it works.
Yep.
We're not meant to go to court by television camera,
right.
You know, by Zoom. And,
you know, we were talking about, you know, getting involved, and I'm a very proactive person, you know, and I try to teach that. And, you know, every time I have a guest on the show, we always talk about, you know, what do you want the public to know, you know, and in any prosecution, in any type of case, I don't care if it's drugs, sex crimes, you know, robbery, armed robbery, you know, gun violations, whatever, you know, the key is to report it and get involved.
Right.
You know, if you want your community to stay a safe and, you know, good community, you have to get involved. I mean, you know, you know, I used to teach crime prevention. You know, we are, everybody that lives in a community, you are the eyes and ears of that community.
Absolutely.
You know, and in order to be the eyes and ears, you've got to pick up the phone and make that call.
One of the things that sometimes I'm really perplexed, you know, there'll be an assault and there's 10, 15, 20 people there and no one calls.
Because they're too busy using their phone to film it.
Sometimes.
Which is terrible.
And a lot of times when we do locate them and we ask them, why didn't you call? I thought someone else did. It's like, well, if everyone thinks that, no one's making that call. I would rather get 10 reports of the same crime than, you know, we have a 911 dispatch center. That's what they're there for. So if anyone does see anything suspicious, and even if you're not sure, especially when it comes to children, right? Because children, you know, they, for the most part, can't speak out. And if anyone sees anything concerning relating to a child, be on the safe side and report it. Because we'll not we, my office does not investigate, but the law enforcement professionals will investigate it, and hopefully you're wrong. But I would rather have that investigation looked into than have people look the other way, you know?
Yeah. It's super important to be to get involved, and you know, even for the most, you know, simplest mundane things, you know, to make that phone call, because, you know, you truly could save a life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, it's when people do make those phone calls and do get involved, it's really the only way that the system works, because if we don't know about it, it's not going to get investigated, and you know, no one wants to be a victim of a crime. So sadly, we have victims that don't report because they're afraid, maybe of the person, maybe of the system. My office, we have a victim rights unit, and that's
We're going to be talking next week
good.
To her.
And our mutual friend that we know ran that unit, and that is such an important unit, because that unit doesn't make it, you know, there's no way to make the process enjoyable, but they make it copable. They help that victim with many things. This, you know, they'll answer questions. This is what the court process. Oh, you want to see the courtroom? We'll bring you into the courtroom ahead of time, especially with kids.
Sure.
So no one wants to be a victim of a crime, but I can tell you, in St. Clair County, you're going to be treated with respect, and we care about everyone, but we really, you know, we do what we do for victims. They mean everything. And my boss, the elected prosecutor, Michael Wendling, that's the #1 priority, and he's always been that way.
Yeah.
So
that's really good to hear, you know, because you're right. I mean, a lot of victims don't come forward because of, you know, like you said, the fear of the process.
Exactly.
You know, it's only the person that did it to them, but the process of, you know, having to face them again.
Right.
In the court.
You know, people watch television shows and they're entertaining, but they're not real.
Yeah, they're not true.
No, they are absolutely not true. One of the things that, you know, when CSI became, crime scene investigation show, became, you know, popular, sadly, I had to start vordeering, asking the jury questions on that because they believe it. And that show won a science fiction award. You know, a lot of the concepts they talk are real, but the way they use them in the show, it's all made up. It's fantasy. You know, people don't always leave fingerprints, and so we've had, you know, this struggle, and a victim sees a crime show and the victim's being treated horribly. It's not like that.
No.
Real world is very different. And another thing that I really pride our office on is we're very honest with victims. It's, you know, it'd be so nice to just tell them what they want to hear, but you can't.
You can't.
You know, so we're honest with them, we're compassionate with them, and the group of victim advocates that we have, they care about them. And so do my assistant prosecutors. You know, they, you know, you meet people, you develop a relationship, a professional relationship, but a relationship, you know, you can't stop, you can't not care about the person. And I think in the end, it really gives a better result and the greater chance of making sure that justice is done.
Yeah, that's good to know. That's good to know. You know, we had just touched on it, but we're going to talk about a sensitive subject: crimes with children.
Yeah.
You know, crimes against children, I should say. Are there really more crimes against children now than there were 40 years ago?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I think what we're better at is we're better at investigating them. For example, I have a prosecutor, all she does are children assault cases. Sadly, most of those are sexual assaults. She's done it, she's going on 3rd year. I'm gonna have to move her out of that because you can't spend too long there. But The state of Michigan has a forensic protocol for interviewing those children. We have mandated reporters. So I think that sadly, children have always been abused and molested, but now we're better at detecting, and we're definitely better at prosecuting and making sure that this process is workable for that child victim, because that child, it's so different. And we have a victim dog. His name is Bruin. And I have seen that dog work miracles with kids. It's so, it really is amazing. And that's new, right? 10 years ago, no one was using victim advocate dogs. They didn't exist.
Yeah.
So we continue to learn more, and sadly, that's one of these crimes, like a lot of these crimes, like check cases. I don't get many check cases anymore. 16, 17 years ago, we're prosecuting a lot of bad check cases. Well, no one's writing checks anymore. We have our cards.
Yeah.
Child abuse, child molestation, those types of, it's always going to be here, sadly. Yeah. And we need to be really vigilant. And that's another area where if you suspect something, you really need to report it.
Yeah.
Because, boy, some of these kids go through this for years.
Right.
And people like, oh, that person would never, we don't know what happens behind closed doors. And that's a crime of secrecy, right? No one, it doesn't happen in the open. It happens behind closed doors. Sadly, it happens among family members.
Yeah.
So, St. Clair County, we have a great child abuse and neglect council. We have a wonderful facility there, a trained forensic interviewer, so that child only has to be interviewed once. In the old days, the kid was put through the ringer,
yeah.
right?
Yep,
Interview
time
after
and time again.
and every time that child has to talk about it, it's traumatic. So now we have, we really have come a long way. A long way.
Yeah, that's great. And I also think too that we're more open about it. It's okay to talk about it.
Exactly. And before it was this secret that people would, it was a taboo subject. No, it happens, and we need to accept that it happens, and we need to deal with it. Because, for these child victims, there's lifelong consequences. And if we can, one, get it to stop, get that child services at an early age, less damage.
Right.
I mean.
Yeah. There's a saying out there, and it's easier to raise a child than to repair an adult.
Absolutely. And that is so true.
So true.
It really is.
Yeah. Pedophilia has always been around. And, I talk to my family members, my nieces and nephews that have children, and I grew up playing outside. I mean, that is all we did was play outside, and there's a hesitancy now.
Sure.
And it's like, well, I really don't want them to ride their bike around the block.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're 8 and 10 years old. They can ride around the block.
When I was a kid, Mom would put me out of the house at 8 in the morning, and I'd come back at 5.
Yeah.
Have
Seriously.
lunch at a friend's house. We were fine. We can't let them stop being kids.
We can't let them stop
and
being
we
kids.
can't let them go into this video game world or these
Oh,
phones.
it's even worse.
Because they need to play. They need to have child activities. What we need to do is teach them, don't talk to a stranger, and we mean it, even if they're looking for their puppy dog. We try to educate them, make sure we have an open communication with them, that if something did happen, they would tell. But we can't let them stop being kids.
Right.
Because you can't protect them. I mean, by the very nature of growing up, you fail, you fall, you get back up, and you learn from it.
And you learn from it.
Yeah.
Because I think, teaching street smarts and common sense.
Absolutely.
To your kids. I mean, literally
Yep.
riding a bike with them and talking about it, is massively valuable. And then what to do
Absolutely.
in case
Yeah.
something does happen.
Right,
You know,
right.
I have one of my nieces is, you know, she's totally paranoid about somebody like just grabbing her kid and abducting them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you know how rare
Right,
that is?
right.
How
It
absolutely
is
rare that is.
extremely rare.
You know,
And yeah, they have to have the game, the game plan. What do you do in case?
yeah.
So one of the other things that I think this is a good time to talk about it is our office, and I'm the one. Mike Wendling really believes in preventive education. So we team up with the Child Abuse Neglect Council, and the person that I go to schools with is Lindsay Chop from that agency. And we go to all the middle schools, and we go to all the high schools. And we put on educational programming for them. We talk to sixth graders, and that program is called Just the Facts. And so you have the elementary moving into sixth grade, and then for that program, it is actors come in, and they act out scenes in which people are not making the best choices. And then we ask the kids for, what could that person do? They'll give us the answer, and then they'll act out the way to deal with the problem. So we do that in sixth grade. We also talk to seventh, eighth graders, and with that we play, it's like an educational Jeopardy, where we start to let them know there's drugs out there, and this is what you do when you're approached, because not if, when, sadly. And then we have a real amped up version of that when they're in high school, when we start talking to them and teaching them about college. And this is what you do at college when you're faced with this situation. And I'm really proud of that program because Lindsay and I, we've adapted it through the years. So as technology is different, like when we first started doing this, MySpace was the big social media app, not app, website that people had to worry about. No one had, little kids didn't have cell phones. They all have cell phones, not all of them, but a lot of them.
Yeah.
So we're a lot about being smart and also educating them that there's consequences. Thank goodness when I was their age, we didn't have cell phones because I think I would have gotten in a lot of trouble.
Right, right.
Because this technology, it's so useful and helpful, but boy, you can make some bad choices.
You can make some bad choices.
So,
your sixth grade program, like, give me like a subject matter. Like, what would you say to, or what do the actors convey in the sixth grade?
all right, so one of the scenes is there is one of the actors is pretending to be a middle schooler, and they're chatting online with someone they don't know. And the person is, like, if it's St.Clair, we'll say the person's from Marine City. If they're from Marines, we always like to use rival schools.
A little rival, yeah.
But they don't know them, and they want to meet at the playground or the soccer field. And obviously that can be very dangerous. This could be an adult. We don't know who it is. So we run through that skit, and then we ask the kids, what was going on there? What about that was dangerous? What about that? What should our student do? And then they'll give us the input, and then they'll do it. And then so they'll act it out the right way so they can see that if a stranger starts to chat or how you get out of that situation. So,
Right.
but that's just one example. We have
Yeah.
a bunch of them that
I'm
we
sure,
do
yeah.
about like parties and having a friend. The buddy system really does work.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's sixth grade, and then seventh
Sixth
and eighth grade, you're talking a little
seventh
bit.
or eighth, it's usually the health class. And then we literally, it's Jeopardy through PowerPoint. And we have relevant topics for them. And then if they answer the question correctly, Lindsay has a big bag of candy. She'll throw them a piece of candy because you got to get them involved.
Yeah. Yes.
And they don't like to volunteer unless they know they're going to get some. So And a lot of the middle school is gearing them up for what's going to happen in high school and what they're dealing with already. Because sadly, we have to talk about sexting in middle school.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I never thought that we would, you know, why do we need, well, because they're doing it.
Because they're doing it. So
And-
let's talk about it.
Yes.
What is sexting?
Sexting really is just street slang. It doesn't exist, but everyone calls it that. And essentially what it is, it's child pornography.
That's exactly right.
You know,
Yep.
they don't, at that age, they don't think of it that way, but they're children in the eyes of the law. They're under 18. And if they take an inappropriate picture without clothing on and send it to someone, they have just delivered and manufactured child pornography. And there are some really huge legal ramifications that come with that. So part of what Lindsay and I like to do as it relates to that, and I do believe we've been successful because the number of cases have been down, is we explain to them, this is what the law says about that. That's a 20-year felony. That could get you on the sex registry for, you know, 20 years, for 15 years, depending upon the, you know, for life on some of the crimes. So we explain, you know, this is what you think you're doing, but this is what you're really doing as it relates to the law. And this is a very harsh law. I don't agree with it. I think it's too harsh. These young people don't think right, some of them. But I don't make the laws, I enforce them. So part of what we really want to do is get out there and educate them that, hey, there's another side to this story. You send this picture out and then it starts getting shared, and you know, there's a lot of psychological and emotional consequences that go along with it that young people don't necessarily think through.
You never know where that picture's going to end up.
Never.
And also in your future.
Exactly.
In your future.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you are, you know, a professional, you know, whatever, and the picture shows up.
We also explain to our high schoolers, keep your social, you know, we know you have social media. It's fine. Keep it clean, because colleges look at it, employers look at it. I know when we hire people in my office, it's one of the first things we do, right? You look and see, you know, who are they really?
Yeah.
Everyone can dress up and present well, but who are they when they're not working? And, you know, we're looking for people that are not gonna get in trouble with the law, that people that have good values, you know, it just kind of goes. And so we really stress that on the high schollers. Like, it may be fun to have these pictures up, but they can come back to haunt you.
They can come back to haunt you.
Yeah.
And don't you think, though, that too, that's the type of thing that skews the numbers worse, as far as, I just had this conversation with one of my employees, and she says, oh my gosh, I was just looking up, she just moved. You know, I was just looking up the sex offenders.
Oh, on the registry,
and I said, you automatically, where does your brain go? And she says, well, they're sex offenders. I said, do you know that you can urinate in public?
Right. So this is a huge problem, I believe, with the registry. I understand child molestation. A lot of those, they're repeat offenders, right? Whatever sickness they suffer from, it doesn't seem to get better. That's the person, when as a parent, that's the one I want to know where they're living.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't send my kid there trick-or-treating. I honestly don't care about two 15-year-olds having consensual, you know, I care, but I don't need to know that on the registry.
Right.
And so the registry encompasses a lot of crimes. And a really good example of that is sexting. The registry doesn't say, well, this is 17-year-old boyfriend and 16-year-old girlfriend doing it mutual, like they both wanted to do it. It doesn't say that. It reports the crime. So when I see that on the registry, I think, oh, there's a child pornographer. When in reality, it was very different circumstances.
Yep.
So that's one of the downfalls and the dangers of the registry. I think the registry is a good, positive thing, but it does bring in a large group of individuals that probably don't need to be there. And it is, you know, for those individuals, and I'm not making excuses, but people run that, and they know. And I get the fact that there is a need to know, but I just think there's a lot on there that probably don't need to be.
Yeah. So, you know, just to recap, you know, I'm really glad you're in the schools.
Oh, me
yeah,
too.
I think that is such a huge program. I
It
mean,
is one of the parts of my job that I enjoy. Almost, I love what I do. I work with great people. We help people, but getting out into the schools, talking to the young people, and you know, listening to them, and then also tracking the juvenile crime trends so that we can, hey, this is a problem, so that, you know, we can address it. Because I really think too, you know, kids, they don't always know what they're doing and how serious it is. And if we can make a little bit of a difference, it's worth it.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. And I think too, it's important, you know, that we already touched on this, is, you know, to trust your kids a little bit too. And but, you know, when my kids got to be that age where they were riding their bikes and that kind of stuff, I rode my bike with them.
Right,
you know,
absolutely.
and we did the neighborhood thing, and I talked about who lived there and who lived here.
Yes.
And then when they went on their own, they knew
They
where
knew
could stop.
this is a house.
Yes, I can go to Mrs. Clark's house, and you know.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's really important, almost more now than ever, that parents know the parents of their children's friends. You know, because when kids spend time over at, you know, you don't want it to be a stranger. And I raised my kids in St.Clair, and we had a wonderful neighborhood, and we had those, I knew all their friends' parents.
Yep.
In fact, we would have dinner, and to this day, I'm still friends with them, and they're grown. So I think it's really important that you know, parents really get involved, but also don't helicopter. You know, it's okay for your child to live a little, and to make mistakes, because you can't save them from everything.
No, they're eventually going to go and have to get street smarts on their own.
Exactly.
You know.
Yep.
I'd rather have them kind of learn it from me.
Me too. Me too.
We talked about that. We talked about that. I'm just. Do you drop in after? Do you see a drop in some of the crimes that you see after you finished with the programs at the schools? I mean, you know, obviously they're working.
They are. I really do believe they're working. And the one area that I would point to is the sexting, that we call it.
Right.
The number, that was, it's still a problem, and it always will be a problem, but it was out of control. And it's really interesting to see the kids' faces when you explain the legal ramifications. They're like, and then what I do.
I've just sent a picture.
Yeah.
I just sent
and then we also explain to them, this is how we catch you. And they cannot believe, like, there's, you know, this technology, it's scary. You know, I'm getting ready to go on a vacation next week. And if I take a picture and send it, they'll know right where I was when I took that picture. And that's how sexting works too. If we get a hold of that picture, we can go inside that photo and look at location. And most of these kids take the pictures in their bedrooms.
Right.
And now we may not have a head associated with that picture, but we knew it was this address, this part of the house. And it's just really, it's really interesting to see their jaws drop as we are doing the talks. But I believe it's making a difference, because the number of cases that we're getting is lower. And some of them, I always tell them, you report it. I won't prosecute you. I want, you know, we want it to stop. If you made a mistake, you made a bad choice, someone's threatening you, they want more pictures, and if you don't send them, they're going to tell us.
Yeah.
We'll get it to stop, and you will be okay. You're going to have to deal with mom and dad. I can't control that, but I'm not gonna make it worse. So, and our law enforcement, they agree with that position too. So they know where we're coming from as it relates to that, because I don't want a child to be on the sex registry.
Right.
I just don't. I want to
Right.
avoid it.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons that Lindsay and I, we spend hours, and I don't, I'm not getting compensated for it. It's part of the job. If we can help prevent crime, we want to do that.
Absolutely.
I'd rather prevent it than prosecute it, truthfully. But
what is our number one crime here in St. Clair County?
domestic violence. Yeah, sad.
That's very surprising.
Yeah.
Because I've asked that question to a variety of people, and the first thing they say is drugs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because we've talked.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nope, it's not.
Domestic violence and drunk and drugged driving. We are seeing such an uptick in people that are driving automobiles while they're high on drugs. And it's scary. And sadly, we have a fatal crash unit in my office. I have 2 prosecutors that are highly trained, and those are the types of cases that they deal a lot with. And they're common,
So on the scene, so let's say there's a fatality,
Yep,
right?
and we have them quite frequently, sadly.
Yep. So there's a fatality, and the officer arrives on the scene,
Yep.
and he suspects something is wrong with.
He knows he's not smelling alcohol,
Right.
but he's noticing, boy, that driver is acting strange. In our county, we have a number of, they're called DREs, drug recognition experts. And our DREs, Sheriff Department's got 2, MSP's got at least 1 or 2, Port Huron's got 1. And if it happens in Marysville or St. Clair, Port Huron will come out and assist. Because, these departments, it's a very intense, expensive training, but these are experts in detecting whether or not a person is under the influence of a controlled substance. So they will come out, they'll do that investigation, and then my prosecutors on fatals, they'll show up a lot of times. They will go right to the scene.
Oh, wow.
It can be 2, 3 in the morning. I will get a phone call, hey, there's a fatal, I'm heading out there, I want you to know. Because that's part of what I do and Michael Wendling does. We know a lot about the office, and when there's a fatality or a tragedy like that, we're notified. So we'll have a prosecutor a lot of times out there, the DRE will be out there, and then if the person won't consent to a blood draw, we'll put together a search warrant and have the blood drawn, sent into the Michigan State Police Crime Lab, and then they will analyze the substances. And sadly, sometimes it's like a cocktail. They're not just under one substance. They've got marijuana, amphetamines. They have a whole, and drugs. Some of them, even on their own, they're dangerous. But boy, you start mixing combinations, illicit, illegal drugs, you get bad outcomes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And that's a really big area that we are seeing a lot more of, and I expect we're going to see more with, as these marijuana shops open up. It's coming. But yeah, domestic violence by far the constant. And
why do you think that is? Why all of a sudden? I shouldn't say all of a sudden, because it's always been there.
It's
but,
always been, but this is what I can tell you.
We're like an angry society
Yeah.
now.
Well, when I was young, one of the things my father taught me, and I don't mean to sound sexist,
No.
but he said, you never hit a girl.
Don't hit a girl.
You just don't do
Yep.
it. And that's what I learned, that's what I believed. And I knew that if I ever did, I don't need to worry about the police. I would have to deal with my dad, and I was more afraid of that.
Yeah.
And that's not true anymore. At least on a, it's kind of, it's not the, you know, it's like, what's the big deal? Well, you can't do that. I mean, if you really think about domestic violence, you know, this is a relationship. You're supposed to love and respect the person, and you are beating the person up. Like, that's a dysfunction.
But they always say they're sorry
always,
after.
Always.
But I'm going to buy you some flowers,
Yep.
say I'm sorry,
Yep. And
you know,
you
wait for the next time.
Can't fix that. Exactly. And
Wait for the next
sadly,
time.
there is a next time.
Of course there
and
is.
then a next time, and a next time. And part of what Courtney, who you're going to be interviewing in a week or so, part of what our victims advocates do is they listen, they understand the process, they try to be supportive and help these victims, because a lot of these victims, they're trapped and they don't know what else to do. And that's why we have really strict policies at our office regarding domestic violence. We don't plea them out, meaning we don't reduce the domestic violence to another type of crime, because sadly we get the repeat offenders, and some are over and over and over, and these are individuals that need to be dealt with, and we need to help these victims. And a lot of times, you know, the victims don't want, you know, I don't want you to prosecute.
Right.
It's like, I understand, I respect that, but we need to, and here's why. And it's our choice, not your choice. So that's another thing that some of the public doesn't understand, because on television we always see, oh, I don't want to press charges. Well, you're not. It's people of the state of Michigan versus.
Right.
I'm the bad guy there. If I have a victim that says, he'll never forgive me. You know what? He doesn't need to. It's me. I will be the bad guy, and we'll get through this.
And that's changed.
Yes.
Right? That has changed, because back in the day, you know, you'd roll up on a domestic violence and all of a sudden they would be a happy couple again. You know,
okay, and then we're going to go.
And then we're going to go. And there was nothing that could be done.
Correct. Now we have evidence-based prosecution, so even if we have a victim that is not cooperative, if we can prosecute the case without the victim, we do it. Because it needs to be done. Because, and also for the offender, a lot of people weren't brought up like I was. I mean, I'm so fortunate to have loving mother, loving father that I think taught me good, what I think are normal things that, but a lot of people aren't that fortunate. And there are a lot of programs for offenders. There's anger management programs, so that they can learn, boy, when I start feeling like this is a way I can diffuse it. Because maybe the person does care and does love the victim, they just don't know how to deal with what they're dealing with. So there's help out there for victims and offenders, but we need to get those into the system, or then we just can't get the help.
What amazes me is you know, how long a victim will stay.
Oh my goodness.
In that type of a relationship. I mean, and I always ask, because, you know, I have a lot of female employees, and you know, we talk, and all of a sudden, you know, it'll start coming out that they in the past were victims of domestic violence, and I said, what happened? Well, you know, we would be driving, he'd get mad, he'd backhand me, and I'm like, what? And I said, and you stayed in
right.
Well, you know, and
so I'm going to tell you a little war story, and because I wondered the same thing. And I had, when I was a trial prosecutor, I had a victim over and over and over, and she would never cooperate. And I used to get so frustrated with her, because I knew I'd see her again. And one day he stabbed her. He stabbed her right in the abdomen. She lived. I knew she wasn't going to cooperate. We end up, she shows up. His face was, I want to plead guilty to the no, that plea's off the table. She testified. He got convicted. He got sent to prison. she explained to me, and I said, why? Like,
Why now?
I had you 5 times before. And she said, it was a matter of time before he was going to kill me.
She knew.
And when he stabbed me, I need to be there for my kids. That young lady went on to go to college. She got her degree. She has, and we still, to this day, she calls me maybe once, twice a year to say hi. And I always teased her, like, you're my favorite victim. Because I was just so frustrated with her. And one of the things that she said that really rang true is, I knew when I would be ready, your office, you would be there, because you never judged me. And I wanted to, like, I just wanted to scream at her and yell at her. But she said, your victim advocates, because I don't know why, but I was always her prosecutor. You were always compassionate, you always cared, and I knew when I was ready, you'd be there. And justice eventually was done. So, and they never got back together. When he got out of prison, guess who he started calling?
Of course.
And she said, nope, we're done.
I've changed.
Yep.
I'm a changed man.
She didn't fall for it.
Yeah.
So, and her life became so much better. She had moved from California, and she had no one up here. So it was your classic, he had her isolated, financially dependent.
Sure.
A couple of kids. She had no way out.
Yeah.
But
and especially when you're told that time and time again. You can't leave me.
Yep.
You got nowhere to go.
Yep. Low self-esteem.
Yep.
Boy, when she graduated from college, I was so proud of her. I'm like, you did this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you really, like, just looking back, it's like, but there, you know, there are happy stories.
Yeah, there are.
And there's tragic ones
There
too.
are. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
They break your heart.
Yeah. But, you know, hopefully, you know, eventually they get their smarts.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
And get out.
Yep.
Especially when this stuff happens in front of kids. That's the part that just,
yeah.
you know.
Imagine being a child in a house like that. So you see it.
Could not imagine.
And then what do you do later on? You
sure,
emulate
that's all
it.
you know.
That's what you've learned.
That's what you've learned. That's all you know. You know, we're not born angry.
No.
Anger is learned.
Not at all. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you would like to talk about?
No, I think we covered a lot of the materials.
We did cover a lot.
Just that our office, you know, one of the people wonder with COVID, if you do get a subpoena, the courts are up and running.
Yeah.
And we are we work with our witnesses if they have scheduling issues, but really, you know, justice can't be done if people don't show up. And like we said earlier, get involved.
Get involved.
And then if you need to come to court, no one likes it.
Right.
If you get summoned for jury duty, no one likes it, but
Right.
the system doesn't work. And it is our responsibility as, you know, as citizens. You know, we're so lucky to live in this country. And there's some things we have to do to, you know, continue living in the greatest country.
Right, keeping our freedom.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and part of that, I say this all the time, and this show and other ones that I've done, if everybody just did a little bit.
Oh, amazing.
You know, everybody just needs to do a little bit.
Yep. Even if it's
you know?
a one kind act a day.
Yes.
You know, hold the door open for someone.
Yes.
Say thank you. It really does
Right.
mean a lot and goes a long way.
Goes a long way.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough for being here. We're going to wrap this up for today. My name is Cheryl Vercammen, and I'm the Mayor of Marine City, and this is the Mayor Minute on our Local Government Today series. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.